The collapse of the Assad regime is one of the aftershocks of October 7. When Hamas declared war, Hezbollah joined in the very next day and refused to agree to a ceasefire unless Israel secured one in Gaza first, on Hamas's terms. In the past few months, Israel decisively targeted Hezbollah. Its leaders and operatives, including those coordinating with Syria, were eliminated. Over several weeks, Israel heavily degraded Hezbollah's offensive and command capabilities, rendering the group temporarily incapacitated from fighting with force. Reeling from blows from the IDF, Hezbollah agreed to a ceasefire even without Gaza. Yet as soon as the ceasefire was reached on the Lebanese front, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, launched its own surprise offensive on Syrian-held positions, south of its stronghold, and remarkably advanced virtually unopposed to Damascus. The Assad regime, abandoned by poorly paid, unmotivated troops and preoccupied patrons in Russia and Iran, offered little resistance. Appeals for reinforcements fell on deaf ears. If Syria's troops weren't going to fight for themselves, Axis allies weren't going to rush in to fight for them. While surprised as much as anyone, Israel took immediate steps to realign its forces along the Syrian border. To prevent Assad's remaining arsenal from falling into jihadist hands, Israel targeted Syrian weapon depots, including those holding chemical weapons. Israel captured key border positions just inside Syrian territory, such as Syria's outpost along the Golan Range. From this improved defensive position, Israel will continue to assess the intentions of HTS and whether they would be likely to align with Turkey, follow in the footsteps of ISIS, or inadvertently slip backwards into a new civil war based along ethnic or factional Islamist ties. In the short term, HTS, which despises Hezbollah and has no love for Iran, is unlikely to support the weapons transfer networks Iran used via Hezbollah through Assad. But Middle Eastern politics are unpredictable. With it not inconceivable that such an arrangement should resume in the future, Israel's goal is not to see that happen, possibly through Ankara's influence. Israel cannot dismiss the implications of Assad's quick downfall, with Syria now in the hands of jihadists who may believe that Israel should be similarly attacked in a grander version of October 7. For that reason, Israel's defense posture on the Golan must be further strengthened. While it could be tempting to look at Syria and believe Iran is similarly vulnerable to regime change, one must resist drawing parallels that don't exist. Syria was worn down from years of civil war. Its society was deeply fragmented, and its defense was wholly dependent on Russia and Iran, which ultimately failed them. Iran is a significantly larger country, much richer in resources, and hasn't seen major wars since the 1980s. Its internal defences are untested, and its offensive and defensive capabilities shouldn't be minimised, not least of which its nuclear project, even without fully operational warheads, poses a grave threat through potential dirty bombs. The Assad regime, like the toppled Ba'athist Iraqi regime of Saddam Hussein before it, long exploited the Palestinian cause to try and unify its oppressed citizens behind a common enemy of Israel and the Jewish people. For too long, these dictatorial regimes, responsible for the killing of hundreds of thousands and the displacement of millions, have used the Palestinian cause to whitewash their own crimes. So let's be absolutely clear. The notion that the Palestinian cause is central to instability in the Middle East is a myth. In reality, regimes like Assad's and Iran's exploit the Palestinian issue as a smokescreen to deflect attention from their own corruption, brutality, and human rights abuses. The truth is stark. Middle Eastern instability endures not because of the Palestinian issue, but independent of it. The collapse of yet another oppressive regime exposes this hollow narrative for what it is, a cynical tool used to justify tyranny and mask failures. It's time to discard this illusion and confront the real sources of instability head on.